Hello, and welcome to the Women Fantasy Authors YouTube channel. My guest today is Belle Sikes, and we're going to be talking about her book today and some other things as well. So, Belle, before we get started talking about your book, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and actually when you started to write?
Wow, I started to write when I started to write. When they taught me how to write, I started writing stories. I've been writing
Yeah.
and I wrote all my life and I was kind of discouraged about from creative writing from in high school and I started doing scientific writing. So I ended up with a PhD. So I had to write a whole dissertation. So my very first book was a PhD dissertation on avocado root rot. I'm originally from Britain, Great Britain, and
Oh,
came over when I was a child. And so some of the events in the book are kind of inspired by my journey over from England to Florida.
well,
So
that makes sense that you said I didn't know that. And thinking about the background of the book and everything and where it's located, that makes a lot of sense. So that leads me into my next question. I just finished reading The Cultist's Wife, which is a fantasy period piece. At least that's how I would describe it. So tell us a little bit about the time period where the story takes place.
So it starts in the Edwardian period. In 1908 is when the story is set, and it begins in Britain, in London, outside Bath, at a nice manor house, and it goes to a remote island in the Bahamas. And the Bahamas is a huge archipelago, and the largest island in that archipelago is Andros, but it's very inhospitable, so very few people live there. So in the book, Clara, who is kind of this aristocratic Englishwoman, gets dragged to this remote, desolate kind of place, and she's like, "What the?"
Yes, yes.
With her kids, you know. So yeah, that's so the time period. It's I love writing that kind of like late 19th century, early 20th century, where it's still kind of mannerly, kind of people are still kind of in that like, we have proper ways of behaving, but it's starting to crack. Women are starting to say, "Hey, wait a second, I don't want to be my husband's property anymore." So it's a really fun time period to write in as a woman because I like to say I write fantastical histories for modern feminists,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
love that tagline.
yeah, like because
And
we don't want to go back there, but we kind of
no,
like to
no.
peek. We like to peek in.
Yeah. Well, I think people are really interested in that time period, especially women and how things were changing,
Yeah,
especially if you look at the popular television shows that are
right,
happening
sure.
right now, Bridgerton, The
Hmm.
Gilded Age, and all of that. All of that
Yeah,
was happening right at that cusp in history. So
yeah.
and I'm fascinated with that time period as well, and love reading period pieces, especially across all genres, especially from that time period.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's really fun. I have, but it's funny because I had a reader reach out to me and say, "I don't know if I want to read your next book because I don't like reading sapphic stuff where there's all this homophobia in history." I'm like, "So, in my history, in my fantasy history, we don't have homophobia and queer people are completely accepted." And she's like, "Oh, sign me up." So I
Oh,
like
there you
to
go. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we need to change the narrative a little bit, don't we?
Right, exactly. That's what I like to. That's
Uh,
fun for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I was impressed with your descriptions of island culture from the native perspective, and it seemed very authentic. And I'm wondering how you came to such a realistic portrayal, especially for that time period, for the island culture.
Yeah, yeah. So the Cultist Wife took a long time to write. I think I fully rewrote it 3 times. But I did a lot of research. So the internet's great. The internet's very limited. The internet tells you lies. So I also found some history books, actual physical books that I read about the Bahamas throughout
Wow.
their history. And I wrote the book and I sent it to a Bahamian woman to do a sensitivity read for me. And
Excellent.
she's like, "That's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong." I'm like, "Thank you." So I was able to tap into people who actually live there. And I also found again, I don't want to diss on the internet, but found some great YouTube videos of interviews of people who live in Andros currently and what their lives are like. So I could kind
Ah,
of get the idea of how their speech sounded because it's very similar to like a Southern American Black accent, but
hmm.
it's not, but it's distinctly different. And it's not
Yeah.
Jamaican. It's very distinct. So I worked really hard on watching videos and to get an idea of the place because I've never been to that part of the Bahamas. I've only ever been to Nassau. But to be in that part of the Bahamas, I did a lot of video watching, and there are lots of beautiful diving videos and fishing videos and all these gorgeous. So I could really get into that. And being a scientist, I went and found scientific explorations of this is the flora of this part of the Bahamas, this is the fauna of this, and all these, And so I really delved in there. And so yeah, so it's a combination of books and articles and people that I spoke to get that to try to get it right.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I don't know that everybody really appreciates uh, the amount of research that authors have to do, especially when you're doing a period piece, and especially if you're doing it someplace you've never been. So
Yeah,
I do appreciate that you did so much research because I think it really came through in the writing
that's
and
good.
made the story that much richer for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, good
That's
job.
great. I'm so glad. I'm
Yeah,
glad. I'd
yeah,
love to hear
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So I we're going to start talking a little bit about the characters and the mother Clara, which you've already mentioned. Um, I was not very fond of her when she first entered the story.
Yeah.
It seemed her focus was on, she was kind of out there looking at the mystical, which is part of the story, seeking the other world and all of that. And her children were kind of a secondary thought. And you talked a little bit about her standing in society, and that was normal for women of that time, especially her distance from her children.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They had nannies. They saw their children like they're all tidied up and they would sit down politely for tea and then they'd go away again. So having that, but that societal expectation on her, she was like, this is normal. This is how life is. Then she had to go to this other place where that wasn't the case at all. And she was suddenly responsible for these children's well-being and she didn't know what to do. And for a while, she doesn't understand. She had to do it. She's like, well, I'm doing my thing. And the kids, did they take a bath? I don't know.
Yeah,
It took her a while to like clue into the fact that, oh, I have to do something here versus
it, it, it
just
did.
being about me.
Yeah. And it was also really interesting to see her go from being a privileged woman of culture to these horrible conditions. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but to try to see her navigate that was interesting.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
imagine the culture shock of going to this
right.
really not developed island and having to live a really, really rough life.
And then being treated so poorly because
Yeah,
she has these spiritual desires and people are manipulating that. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
you know,
It was surprising to me initially that her husband left her to go off to this cult in the Bahamas, and that's at the point when I started reading, seeing what was happening on the island, is where I started getting the feeling that something sinister was going on, especially that a bunch of white people went to an island and created a compound where they hid out,
mhm.
a secret compound where they hid out to do their whatever it was going on. And were there, I mean, it seems like that probably happened historically, or that has
You
happened
know,
in the past. It,
traditionally in history for sure, when cults form, they don't do it in public generally. They go and hide because they don't want people under getting into their business. They don't want them
right.
to deny what they're doing. And so, yeah, for sure, this is very culty activity. And I mean, as a young person, and I'm not going to say names because I don't want anybody coming after me. My parents did get dragged into a cult. And so
So you had a
yeah,
sense.
of
Oh,
how
boy.
that felt and what kind of things happen to kids in that situation. Obviously,
Yeah.
there was no all the horrible things that happen. No, I'm sorry, that was not my life.
Yeah.
That was
But
not, but the feelings, the feelings of
yeah,
being in that situation where your parents have dragged you somewhere that you don't really want to go to, and now you're having to do all this stuff where you're like, wait, what? That's
yeah.
very, very much
You just want
real.
to be a kid. Well, that's the next thing that I wanted to talk with you about because Clara ends up taking her kids to this place and kind of abandons them there. So I wanted to talk about Elsie and oh, I'm sorry, her brother's name,
Reggie.
Elsie, because they seem surprisingly mature for their age, although we know that children are resistant. So,
Yeah,
why do
yeah.
you think in that situation the kids were able to be so resilient?
I think the sense of adventure, the wow, this is new and cool and free. No one's telling me what schoolwork to do. Nobody's telling me to brush my hair or take a
Mm.
bath or change my clothes. I'm free. And so sort of little kids get kind of like, "Ooh, this is fun." And so it's not so much that they're like, "Oh, this is terrible." They're like, I'm on this like tropical island and there's fishing and there's like trees to climb. I mean, it's a big adventure for them at first. They're just
Yeah,
like, this is cool. It's not
I
until things start to go bad that's when they have to become like, oh, okay,
the,
wow.
yeah, they were figuring things out. I mean, I have to say the two kids and how they kind of worked through things and became the little hero and heroine in the story is one of my favorite things about the story because I could
Yeah,
relate to that being a kid that grew up wild and running through the woods without
yeah.
any limitations. And I think that your representation of the kids and their journey was one of the best things about the whole book. I really like that.
And that's very me, right? That's me and my little
Yeah.
brother going to a foreign country and you're for the first year, I mean, we just kind of ran free.
Ah,
And so
yeah.
we were not in, on a tropical island. We were in a city, but even so, we had that sense of like going from like everything's very restricted and rigid and you have to do all these things and brush your hair and all this stuff, right? To we were like running wild. So that definitely was something that I could bring from my own life into
Yeah.
Elsie and Reggie. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and the whole like whiny little brother, I'm like, oh yeah.
And how did your brother feel about the story, or
He
has he?
didn't read it.
Didn't read it yet. Well,
He
you
hasn't read
well,
it.
you ask him to listen to the interview and see what he has to say. That's great. That's great. So in the process of uncovering what was actually going on, the children are assisted by some of the islanders. So tell us about Irene and her importance to the story.
So, Irene, this is her home, and the people who have come to her home and bought land, and she's like, what are these people? But she's decided to be pragmatic about it, and she's making money off of them. And I'm not going to give away secrets of how she's doing that.
Yeah.
So she does have some tangential relationship to them. She doesn't like them, but again, she's making money off of them. It's not until her nephew discovers Elsie out in the woods, and they kind of get this bond that Irene and Elsie and Reggie get to be kind of friends. And then Irene is the kind of the medicine woman. She's the herbalist on the island, on that settlement on the island. And so she's pulled in to help with that because, Reggie gets Reggie gets ill. He eats something bad, and Elsie doesn't know what to do. And her mom is like, "He'll be fine. Let him sleep." She's like, "No, mom, I can't think." So she goes to Irene for help. And so Irene kind of gets, and she's very resistant. Irene is very resistant to being part of
Yes.
their world. Like she's like, I've got my own family to take care of. But she is such a compassionate person that she can't help herself. She's very grunt, very gruff, and she's very like, no, go away. But inside, she's like, oh, I gotta help these kids. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's so she does become very important to the story because she is their backup. She's the only adult who listens to them. All the other
Yeah.
adults are like, "Go away, kid. We're busy doing our culty thing," and she's like, "Okay, fine."
Yeah. Yeah. I just heard a quote. I believe it was from James Baldwin. We're talking, and the quote was something like, all the adults are responsible for all the children, or every adult is responsible for every child. And I
Yeah.
just thought it gave me goosebumps because I think I think in most of our hearts that's how we feel. And I
Hmm.
got that sense from her character that the adults are, they're doing what they're doing and they're responsible for that, but the kids are innocent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was interesting to see her stepping up and helping take care of them in her way,
Yeah.
in her way,
In her
and
way,
in
not because
her
again,
way.
her family is her focus. And if it helps her family, okay, she's willing. If it doesn't, if it hurts her family, she's not there for
She's
that
not
at
there. Yeah,
all.
yeah,
She is not
yeah,
there for that. She's kind of the
yeah,
matriarch of her family because her
yeah.
husband is he's a fisherman, so he's away a lot. So she ends up being kind
Right.
of the matriarch, you know. They have a family compound and she's like the one who's helping everybody and making sure everyone's together. So that was really fun to write her because she was really different from the cult. You know, her whole focus on family was kind of to show kind of a contrast with Clara, that Clara's like got this like highfalutin, like, I'm going to do my thing and be a spiritual person. And the kids will first figure it out. Versus Irene is very much like, I'm a spiritual person, but I take care of my family. You know, I
Yeah,
take
yeah,
that is really important. So it
yeah,
was it was an interesting contrast between them that I thought
yeah,
I
yeah,
came up.
yeah. Well, I'm not going to talk about what's happening in the cult. We know what the word cult means. Um, uh, and that's part of the story that people will need to read to find out what's the behind it. But it was a dark note to the story. So,
Yeah.
do you, in terms of this story and your other writing, do you tend to find a dark component to try to illuminate part of the story?
There's always, I feel like this is the darkest story I've written. And actually, after I finished writing that, it was really hard on me. I had to go write something completely different
Yeah,
because a lot of, I mean, I see the darkness but I don't want to focus on the darkness, right? I
right.
want to be like acknowledging it and having people move out of it. I mean, Clara does move out of the darkness, but it takes a long time and it's really kind
Yeah,
of brutal. And I think my second or anyway, third novel, anyway, as same similar. It's a woman's journey and through darkness, and it's not quite as brutal as the cultist wife, but yeah, it's that movement out of darkness into the light. And so I
yeah,
find that really a fun thing to write and really
yeah.
satisfying. But again, the cultist wife was really hard on me, and I had to write
Yeah,
something.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
I don't want what I'm saying to scare people away from the story because it was totally appropriate for the situation and the story, and it made sense, and it wasn't like really, really dark, but it was there's a piece of there. If all of us, we know about cults, and sometimes people get abused in cults. So, but it was totally appropriate to the story, and I found it a really important piece to everything that happened and to Clara's
yeah.
awareness, awakening, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, I did a lot of off-page kind of abuse because I didn't want to be just very, you know.
Yeah,
But for me, the hard part with writing it was the mother's rejection of her children.
that
That
was,
was the part that was for me emotionally hard to write. I mean,
yeah,
the cult
yeah,
stuff was kind of awful and like, oh, but again, I put it off the page, but so I kind of knew what was happening.
yeah,
You know, but it wasn't
yeah,
as hard
yeah.
for me. I think as there actually I had to rewrite a few scenes because my beta readers were like,
Not,
okay, I hate her so much I'm going to kill
no,
her, right? And I had to
yes.
tone her down.
You know, I think you did a good job because I kind of followed her through the story, and as obviously as a woman, thinking, okay, I can kind of see where this is happening, and then when she started showing up, I'm like, that's the woman that I knew was in there. So I
Yeah,
think you did a good job with that. So
yeah,
it really is kind of a triumphant story in the end. How
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
comes,
yeah,
and women, how it shows how when women are challenged, we always for the most part we have the inner strength to come through, especially for our kids.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
at the end, the women coming together,
yes,
right?
exactly.
They don't, the only male people in that climax scene are little boys. It's the women are coming together
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
it, you know. I'm not giving it
yeah,
away. That
yeah, yeah,
it's but it's the women coming together. And
absolutely.
yeah.
So that makes it a really really strong story. I'm going to share your information here so people know how to connect with you and find out about your other stuff. So,
Yeah. I,
you want to talk about you want to talk a little bit about your other writing, your
Yeah,
other
yeah, no, for
yeah.
sure. I'd love to. So again, I said that the Cultist Wife is really hard to write. So I had to turn around and I love romance. I love historical romance. So I turned around and I wrote a romance. It's a historical, sapphic romance between two milliners in the Belle Epoque in France, in Paris.
Hmm.
And it's really sweet and it's cozy and it's slow burn. And it's just like, I had such a fun time writing it. And the
That's great.
characters, like, and
Yeah.
I love, as you can see from my picture, I love hats. And so they're milliners. They make hats in Paris. And one is an aristocrat who's been like put in, has been told she's going to be married off to some guy that she doesn't even know. And she's like, F that, I'm out. And she
Yeah.
runs away to be a milliner. And she meets
Yes.
this working class milliner who's just like, oh, snooty aristocrat. I don't think so, girl. And
Yeah.
so, so it's a really fun, like enemies to lovers, but it's not like it's kind of mean girlish, and it was a lot of fun to write. So
Good.
that
Well,
one's coming out.
Belle, we can see from your picture here that
Yeah,
you do sport some amazing hats,
yeah,
and you when you go to cons, you're in costume often,
yep.
yeah. So that's I can see why you chose that for your next story.
So
Now you're done with that. It's coming out. What's
yeah.
your next project after that? Do you have something
So I
planned?
do. I actually I have a couple things in the works. The one thing that's further along, it's a climate fiction. So I'm not. So I'm all my other books. The three on the bottom. They're all the Roboticist of Versailles series, and they're set in Belle Epoque, France, also. But this is set in London, which is where I'm from, in Bermondsey, which is where I'm from,
Hmm.
in 2080. And there's flooding and there's this neighborhood that's kind of been left to rot, basically. They've been walled off and and so it's the story of this young girl. She's only 19. She's not very educated. She's very poor. And she's kind of so I the th thing in the action movies there's the guy and he's going off to do his actiony thing and he's got his guns and his weaponry and he sees this girl and he kisses her and he tosses her away and she goes off to do adventure. That girl is the person I'm writing about.
I love it. I love it. No, I really love it. I think that's great. I look
So
I look for you. So make sure that I get on your advanced reader
yeah,
copy list for that.
sure,
Okay.
sure. Okay,
Great.
100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right. Well, we're kind of at time. So
Okay.
before we go, is there anything else you want to share with us? Like, what do you do when you're not writing? I mean,
Oh gosh.
are you just?
I
Yeah,
No,
I know you're.
I garden. I love gardening. I have a
Yeah.
California native garden in my front garden, and I have
Oh,
vegetables in the
wonderful.
back. I have chickens. I'm mad on my chickens. I think they're the best little funny little girls ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm kind of a homebody. I do go to a lot of cons.
Yeah.
I'm the Clockwork Alchemy author lead, and I have been for the past,
Oh,
I don't know, 10 years or something. So every October I go to San Mateo and I dress up in my steampunk and I sell books to people and I talk about writing and yeah,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah.
And you're really involved with the Sacramento book scene, right?
The
You're working on
Sacramento Book Festival. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's coming up in April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I'm on the
Excellent.
organizing committee for that, and that's going to be fun.
So you're like me, you're probably overcommitted.
Well, I also
Yes.
have a full-time job, Janet.
Oh, you do. Oh,
I work at the University of California. I'm a writer editor over there. And so everything, I'm all about words.
well, Belle, I want to come and visit you. I
You
want to come
should.
see your chickens. Okay.
Oh my gosh, they are so adorable. You should
Not
totally come
not
see my
not till the
chickens.
weather cools down, but I'd
I
like to
also
come.
play a ton of board games. I don't know, you can't see from behind me, but I have 300 plus board games and I love to play board
Yeah.
games. So come and play board games and see my chickens.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if people go to your website, do you have a newsletter or an email list they can sign up for?
I do. When you go to my newsletter, onto my website, it'll pop up and say, "Do you want to sign up for the newsletter?" If you do that, you also get a free novella.
Excellent. And I will
So
make sure that your link is underneath the video when
perfect.
I get it posted with
Lovely.
your information. Okay.
I'd love that. Thank you.
All right. Well, and I want to say thank you to the people that are joining us at the for all our interviews here. I do this about once a month. If you're enjoying this, please hit the like button below and follow the channel so you can meet new, wonderful, exciting, independent women fantasy authors. And there's a
Yay.
ton of talent out there that you don't know about if you only watch the New York Times bestseller list. So we are showcasing that indie talent here, which I really enjoy. And I get to talk to my writer friends. So this is really, really fun.
This has been
Uh,
so much fun, Janet. Thank you so
great.
much.
Bill, I really appreciate you coming today. And I look forward to talking with you in the future.
Yeah, dude.
All
Okay,
right.
great. Thanks.
All right. Take
Okay.
care.
Okay, bye.